All right, we're good to go. Sydney Pickrem, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Where are you coming from?
I am in Toronto, just in my apartment, just close to downtown.
Toronto. Now, how long you lived in Toronto for?
I've only been here a little over a year, so I kind of moved after season 2 of ISL. I basically made the decision when I was away, and in 4 days packed up everything from Texas and drove to Toronto.
All right, wow. So you're training at A&M at that point. What's the decision then to move back to Canada? Why did you make? Was it a rash decision or was something that was kind of thought out?
No, so I think depending on kind of universities, sometimes the pros had a bit more pool space and luxury than the university program. But since A&M, the rec is a university-run pool, we didn't really have pool space. We were doing 50-minute time slots, sometimes doubles. I think I only really started doubles before about like the week of, I think, before ISL. And so that was kind of the situation. And then I knew I was going to have to quarantine 2 weeks before the Olympic trials. And so it just was kind of the most sensible time to have those 2 weeks off before trials was in December after ISL.
Right. Now, listen, I did just catch a glimpse of something that's new. I saw the new tattoo. You got to show us the new tattoo. What's going on here?
Yeah. So I did get a half sleeve. I'll try and get as much of it. Yeah, about 18 hours.
Dang.
Yeah, so it's funny, actually, Kyle Chalmers was the one who really like sold it to me. I've been wanting it for a while and he definitely pushed me over the edge. But it's just, so it has the 4 different types of flowers. This one is kind of the cherry blossoms to represent Tokyo. Then this one is from Brazil to represent Rio. And then this is, try to get a Mayflower, which represents Nova Scotia, where my family's from. And then these ones are the orange blossoms that represent Florida, where I was born and lived. So
wow,
yeah.
That's super cool. Super cool. I got a little cherry blossom myself up here.
Yeah.
Goes under the arm a little bit, but yeah, I love the cherry blossom too. Are you going to get any color in it at all, or just leave it like that?
No, I'm going to keep it black and white. So I have kind of up here as well a flower that I've had for a while. It was my mom's nickname was Lupin, and so it's a lupin from PEI where our cottage is. So my tattoo artist said if Paris happens, I better be right in there as soon as I could to add to it. But we'll see. I think right now my mom can only handle the half sleeve, and I think I need to take a little bit of a break from tattoos.
I've always thought about going, I've stopped here, but I thought about going down. Now, in terms of the forearm, where is the most sensitive part of the forearm?
I don't know. So kind of, I did mine in 2 days, which she was like, I can't believe you're doing it so fast. It was kind of like 8 hours one day, 10 the next. And I just was like, I need to get it done as quick as possible because of the pool time. And so I did it all outlined. So the whole arm was done after the first day, which was okay. It just was tedious. But then I went, like, it was Tuesday and then went Thursday. And I think like the last 4 hours of the Thursday, I was like, we have dug into everything outlined. We have shaded everything. And then it was funny, actually, Kyle called me and I was like, oh, I'm about to start with the white. And he goes, oh, that's the worst part. He's like, that's the worst part. Good luck. And I was like, don't say that to me. I was like, I'm about to start. And it was about like 2 hours of just like white, which everything had already been like dug in and shaded. And then it was like going back over. So that was probably the most painful part. And I think it was just by the end of it, I was like, I want my arm back. But it's so worth it. And she was sick. It was really cool to have it done by like a female artist too, and in Toronto. And so I'm super happy with how it went.
That's very cool. Yeah, there's definitely a part under my arm where I was like, just end this, please. Like, I cannot stand the misery any longer. But once it's on, you're like, oh, that was easy. But then
then you're like, so what am I doing the next arm?
Yeah, it is addicting, right? Like you kind of get,
oh my gosh,
get addicted.
Yeah, my mom is not the biggest fan of tattoos.
Mm.
And I think I had 6, I think, before I did this one. And I kept saying to the tattoo artist, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a tattoo. She's like, you're not getting a tattoo, you're getting a half sleeve.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, like, I don't know, it's a tattoo. And my mom has gone from hating tattoos, and she's like, can we please just not do neck tattoos or hand tattoos?
Yeah.
She's like gone from like, I don't want my daughter to have tattoos to now like that's all. She's like, please, that's all I ask. Do the rest.
I know. I got a son, 18-year-old son. He's got a couple of tattoos, and I'm like, do not touch your face. If you touch your face, that's the end of me. I'll like be so devastated.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's a trend right now. God, it's an awful trend. But I mean, I love tattoos too, but the face is just too much.
Yeah, I personally, and I told her, I was like, I've always been someone who I want to make sure I can always cover them, like no matter what. Like I just want to be able to have that choice to cover them fully if I wanted to. So I was like, you're fine there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned something else that I just kind of like just found out. I was like reading through your bio all day, and then I'm sitting here waiting for you, and then it just like hit me, and I'm like, hang on a second. She's born in America. You were born in Florida. What's that all about?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was born in Florida. I lived there all the way until I went to university. So I grew up kind of just outside of Clearwater, Tampa area. Oh. And then I went to A&M and was there for 5 years or almost 6. And then now I'm in Toronto. So yeah, I've had dual citizenship since I was 12 or 13. Actually, my coach, Randy, had said he knew that my mom was from Canada as well as my dad. And he was like, she can swim for them. And my mom's like, I don't know what that means. She was like, I'm just driving my daughter knitting at practice and watching her. And he's like, no, like she can have a lot of opportunities at a younger age swimming for Canada than the US. And so she's like, does she have citizenship? And she's like, yeah, I just did it for her anyway because I wanted her to have that luxury. And so, yeah, then I've been swimming for them. This is about to be my 10th year on the team. So it's been a while.
But hang on a second. Like, not only are you one of the best swimmers in the world now, but you were one of the best swimmers in the world back then for your age. Like, as an age group, you were damn good. So was there any consideration to swim for the U.S.?
Honestly, no. I think because I started swimming for them, I think 2012 was my first junior team. And kind of how I had always grown up in like club swimming is I never really even swam like age groups up until I think it's like till you're 14. Like I was going to senior champs from when I was 12 and 13. And because Randy always was like, age doesn't matter when it comes to being the best in the world. It just doesn't. And so he always wanted me to race older individuals. And that's why I did things like senior champs and all of that when I was younger. And he was like, the fact that you can start this senior team where my first Olympic team was, I'd already been on summers for 3 years prior to it. And he just always saw like that was such a great opportunity. And so I've just, and also it's weird. Like I remember always cheering for Canada when it came to like Olympics with my family because my whole family lives in Canada. So if they cheer for the US, it'd be so weird. Right. And even like my neighbors would always have like broadcasting from CBC, like the Canadian network. And I remember as a kid, like going over there and watching like from broadcast from Canada because that's who we always wanted to watch as kids. So I don't know. It never really was like a discussion.
Okay, interesting. I can hear the dog in the background. Does the dog want to play ball right now?
So he actually got groomed today, and I'm actually going out of town, so I got him a lot of toys to spoil him. And so, yeah, he's like, this is amazing. But yeah, he's ready to go.
That's classic. I love it. Well, you mentioned Randy Reese. Now, listen, a lot of people know Eddie, and a lot of people know a lot about Eddie. I don't know if everybody knows a lot about Randy. They know Randy exists, but he's a little bit more private than Eddie. So tell us about Randy and growing up and being coached by him.
So for me, the first thing when I tell people like I swam for Randy Reese growing up, everyone's like, whoa. And that's always the first reaction I get from coaches. They just know who he is and know kind of how he has his techniques. And he's tough. He's really, really tough. And I'm really grateful because when coaches know that I've swam for him, they're like, this girl, she knows how to work. And because that's what I did when I was younger, was just some of the sets that we did then. I'm like, I can't even do that now. I'm like, no, thank you. But he's really tough. I think he's made me who I am. He influenced my swimming and how I view swimming so much. I swam for him since I was 11 until I was 18. So I think like during the developmental stages, he was so influential to me. And still to this day, I talk to him all the time. I went when COVID had hit and I couldn't swim at A&M. I was like, can I come to Florida? And he was like, ugh. And I was like, okay, you want me to come? And he was so excited for me to come. And he was chatting me away like 24/7. I was like, you miss me. And he was like, I wouldn't go that far. And I was like, yes, you do. And we've always had really good banter back and forth. And so, I mean, he's great. He's definitely really tough. And, but I wouldn't change anything. And he's been there for me and still is to this day.
Well, that's interesting. I'm kind of glad you put it that way, because there is kind of like this negativity, negative vibe about him in terms of like, he's tough. And that's all we know about Randy. But then there's obviously a side that is caring for sure. Like you wouldn't have stayed with him that long. You wouldn't want to go back to that guy if you don't know that like deep down he cares for you, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think even to this day, he still talks to my mom all the time. And even like his wife, like we knew super well when I was growing up. And I think I was someone who I'm not really afraid to push back, but also with a lot of respect. And I think that was the biggest part of our relationship, was I was willing to question out of curiosity and wanting the knowledge, not really push back as a kid, just being like, I don't want to do this. I was like, no, like this doesn't make sense to me. Like you need to explain this to me. And just that was kind of our personalities. And yeah, I mean, we worked really well together. And there's times where even now, if I just kind of feel lost in the sport, I can always call him. And I know he'd be like, just come back here and come swim with me at any time. He's always been really open to that. And yeah, I mean, I've called him out of the blue a few times in crisis mode, and he's like, oh, here we go. But I was like, you miss having me around all the time. And I know he does, and he'll never admit it. But yeah, he's a great coach for sure.
So in terms of that, then what are the things that people are missing, or what are the things they need to understand? I mean, he obviously values hard work. I think we understand that. But in terms of the hard work that you're doing, what is it exactly? I mean, there's volume attached to it, obviously, I guess. And so, what is the work that you're doing under him?
I think the biggest thing was I always wanted to be a smart swimmer when it came to sets. And again, like knowing the purpose of what you're doing and showing that you care more than just, okay, I'm going to go, and it's kind of going through the motions, which I think there's some practices where I don't have the mental capacity and it's just like going through the motions. And I think everybody has those on those days, but he wants you to show up and show that you understand there's a purpose for what you're doing. And I guess showing that in either asking your questions or understanding when you're supposed to be going, understanding what times you should be holding, and understanding just those technicalities, I think is a huge part of why I worked so well with him, because he wasn't going to every single rep tell you what you're doing with your technique wrong. He wanted you to be a smart swimmer on your own and know what he told me a week ago. You should be still thinking about that. He's like, I don't need to tell you every single time that you need to be breathing this pattern or you need to have this many kicks. He wants you to always have that knowledge in the back of your mind. And I think showing that and always just being really, really present with your swimming was the biggest part, I think.
Vasa has been the go-to training tool outside of the pool for over 30 years. Vasa's products are ideal for developing power and proper technique in your swimmer's catch. Add a few Vasa trainers to your pool deck, and it's like adding an extra lane to your swimming pool. Go to vasatrainer.com, use code BREAD at checkout, and get 10% off anything from Vasa. Destro Swim Towers. Gain strength in the water with a tower of power. Save $150 for a double swim tower by using code BRETT, B-R-E-T-T, at checkout. DestroMachines.com. I'm sure you know Eddie and have heard stories about Eddie. What do you think? What do you think of the differences then between him and Eddie?
Complete opposite.
Okay, well, tell me what that means to you then. What's the complete opposite?
It's funny because going to A&M, I saw Eddie all the time because we would either race Texas, or if we were going to a meet, we would usually go in Austin, and I would see Eddie all time throughout my university. And I know that he had talked to Eddie while I was being trained, and had kind of, I knew that Eddie knew who I was, and he was kind of the same. He's like, "Oh, God bless you for putting up with my brother for so many years." And so that was me and Eddie's relationship, was he's like, "I know what you've been through." And but Eddie's it's so funny, the difference, because they're both so legendary coaches in their own ways. And I think like Eddie will be on poolside chit-chatting with everyone, and like whether the guys are just like playing around with the ball before like before getting in, and just like that's him, and just talking, and Randy's off in the corner and just like sitting there. And I will never forget when I was sitting next to him after like a race or something, and he doesn't have a stopwatch, and he's just watching this girl swim, and she went out, I don't know what it was, and it was like 100 fly, and he's like, "Yeah, she's gonna go 57.2," and like doesn't have a stopwatch, like nothing, and like she finishes the race dead on 57.2, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "How do you do?" I was like, "What is wrong? Like, how do you have that like magic power?" And that's just him. He's just like very to himself and quieter, and just has so much knowledge. And Eddie is the same way, but just like the extroverted side. And so they're definitely really different. And it's crazy how legendary they can be in this sport in so polar opposite ways, and then also be brothers.
Well, that's it. I mean, polar opposite personalities, but probably very similar intelligence, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
And intuition in terms of the swimming science of it. They just get it, you know? So that makes perfect sense. Now, in terms of A&M, selecting A&M, it seems like you selected a coach that had kind of a similar personality. I mean, Steve's not, you know, he's not that kind of like, you know, center of attention type coach, but he's going to be the worker. He's going to be the quiet guy, but he's very, very intelligent. So did that play a part in your selection of where you went?
Yeah, so I think in the recruiting stage, it's so crazy to look at how recruiting is now versus even when I was going in. And I think like now people are like 14 and I think they know where they're going. I'm like, I didn't even think about college swimming then. And so it's actually my junior year. I was out of the country from end of June until like end of August. I think it was like Commonwealths and Pan Pacs, and I did like French Open or something. And this is when I think I had an iPhone, but I don't think I had like a SIM card or anything. Like I couldn't take calls when I was away. Like I was like, I don't even think I knew what WhatsApp was then. And so I remember just being like, I'm missing everything. I'm missing recruiting. Like, I'm not going to be able to talk to anyone. Like, I'm not going to have any scholarship. Like, this is going to be a complete bust. And I think I got back, and like my best friend had already been on a trip, and she already was like, this is where I want to go. And I was like, I'm so behind. And so I had kind of given a list of schools to Randy, and he was like, why isn't A&M on this list? And I was like, well, they never sent me an email. So what am I supposed to do? He was like, hold on. And I was like, okay. And so I swam like our 600 warm up. And then he came back at the end. He's like, Steve's going to call you later today. And I was like, what? Steve Bultman? Like, this is crazy. And so then I think later that night, like I hopped on a call with him. And then within like a week or two, we scheduled a trip. And then I think I finished, and 3 days later committed. It was really, really rapid. And I think I just had so much trust in Randy, and he had gotten me so far into the sport that he told me, he was like, right now, Steve is the best coach in the NCAA, and it's who I want you to swim for, and it's going to make you the best swimmer you can be. And I was like, okay, sold. And so I just trusted in Randy, and I had such an open conversation with Steve through the recruiting process of kind of what I needed. And I just wanted to make sure I was like, look, like I'm going into college, but I'm thinking about 2016 Olympics. Like I don't really swim yards that much. And as much as I want to contribute to the team, like those goals are a lot more important to me, making Olympic teams and world championships. And Steve respected it. And that was a big part of it, was going to a school that showed up to my Olympic trials. I was like, I'm not going to go to a school that they don't even send a coach to go to Canadian trials. And that was something that I was like, I want to make sure that they know where my priorities lie. And I look past college swimming, as well as I will be very present during it. That's kind of, I want to become an Olympian, and I wanted to go to worlds and be medalist. And so Steve really understood that. And yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And it does seem like a perfect fit. I mean, looking back now, you had an incredible college career, and it does seem like you did really well under Steve. It seemed like you embraced A&M, like everything about it just seemed to fit. So in terms of kind of Randy almost making that decision for you, it turned out perfectly, and that doesn't always happen like that. But tell me about this then. Tell me about fitting into a college system, but also having this individual mindset of going to the World Championships and going to Olympics and going to Commonwealth Games. How does Steve balance that? Whereas, okay, right now, the most important thing is the team, and then right now, the most important thing is you. That's a very fine balance to get right for a lot of college coaches, you know?
Yeah, I think the biggest part was we had such an environment that there was a lot of people in the same boat, where I think when I first got there, we had swimmers from South Africa, Ireland, Canada, the US, and that was kind of just so understood. And I think that was kind of the biggest part, is you just had partners doing what you wanted to do, where when you finish NCAAs, that next Monday, it's like, oh, we're in college. Like, this is the first, like, Monday we don't have practice. Like, we can actually go to like a college bar with normal people that like can go out all the time. And when you swim for internationally, I was like, my trials is in 2 weeks. And so that's always a hard balance. I think like that, finishing SCCs to NCs and knowing that's not our break time. We don't really get that break because of where our trials usually lie. And we had such a common group that had that same mindset. And I think that was, he really put a lot of trust, I think, in us to work together as teammates, as well as he was always there for you 100% if you were either nervous about the taper, like what you wanted to do. And, but he just you never questioned whether you could do everything. And I think that was a huge part where, okay, you come to invite and you hope you get all of your time. So when it comes to SECs, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to taper for SECs. You've already done your times for NCAAs. So that's one less meet to really worry about. And we would only really rest for SECs once or like 2 or 3 days. And then going into NCAAs, just trying to hit the best we can, but knowing we came back to work right away after that and just got our mind around long course season. And he just never really, you always had faith in him that he was doing everything right. And all of us just trusted it and worked together as a group.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. You know, when Randy says he's the best coach in the NCAA right now, there's obviously some things that Randy respects about him, and maybe even some similarities. So what are the similarities and the transitions into going into that program, you know, the ease of moving into that program with Steve, and then maybe what are a couple of differences that you noticed?
I think similarities is the fact that he's not hands-on 24/7. I think he, again, like Randy, he's like, I want you to know what you're working on. It's almost like if he were to ask you like, okay, what are you thinking about here? You should always have an answer. Right. And I think that is very similar from Randy to Steve. And then I think the very differences is Randy's really tough and he's not going to hold back. And he is going to tell you like it is, very bluntly. And if he's like, what are you doing in swimming? If you don't want to be the best, like just get out. And I think that was like a couple of times. There was multiple experiences, I think, with Randy and the group as a whole, where he was like, I'm going to weed out the weak. Like, I don't want you here if you're not dedicated. Where Steve has the more like, it's going to be okay. let's work through this. Just very like comforting. And it's interesting because Randy's so tough and I know how much he cares about me, he's comforting in that way. Where Steve, I could call him and he could tell me exactly what like I want to hear, and like that will comfort me in that way. And so they're like, delivery is very, very different from Steve to Randy.
Is there, I'm not saying that one's better than the other for sure, but in terms of maybe ultimate performance, right? You know, when we're talking about cutthroat performance at a NCAAs, being the best at the NCAA, being the best at a World Championships or a Commonwealth Games or an Olympic Games, what did you need more, you think? Did you need more of the hardness of Randy or the softness of Steve at that moment, you think?
I definitely needed the hardness of Randy. I think that I had for those 7 years has shaped how I view swimming. And not unfortunately, I think something is, I don't think I'll ever achieve, not that I don't think I'll ever, this sounds horrible. I don't know if I'll ever be as great as I want to. And I think that's something that I hope to get to. But I know it also has made me who I am, and it pushes me that there's always going to be more. And that was instilled in me from being pretty young. And I think if I didn't have that going into Steve, I wouldn't have that instinct to try and be the best as prominent. If I kind of went the other way, where if say I was with Steve and then going to Randy, I'd be like, oh my gosh. But I think because I had Randy going into Steve, I just could appreciate things in a different light. And I mean, I think the toughness, there's a reason that there's only so many swimmers that I think can hang with Randy for as long as say I did. And I think if you can make it and understand how he works and how it's just there to try and make you the best that you can be, then you're going to do great with it. But otherwise it might break you. And that's unfortunately has happened to a lot of people. And coaching, I mean, you're there to find the right fit. And so I'm grateful for how I went from kind of Randy to Steve to have those perspectives.
Well, listen, it's an honest and open assessment. And I appreciate you being vulnerable in that sense to at least be honest with yourself. You know, you're publicly being honest right now, but you're being honest with yourself as well. What do you think then, if we could dig a little deeper on that, then what is it about you that responded to that type of toughness? Because there are other people that quit around you. There are people that couldn't handle that. So what is it about you that could handle that?
I think a lot of it has to do with kind of how I was raised. And I think it's interesting now. I think now that I kind of help out more with, say, younger kids and in different club scenarios and looking back in how mine was. And I think how I was in a club scenario with my coach and everything, there's no way it would fly nowadays, like 100%. And I think that's just how the nature of the sport is changing. But for me, my mom would drop me off and she never got into a relationship between me and Randy. She was like, that's your coach. That's nothing to do with me. And my mom was never a swimmer. She understood swimming for sure and was definitely invested in like my happiness in the sport. But that was basically it. She would come and she would, honestly, when most moms would go and sit upstairs, she'd probably sit in the car and she's like, I'm going to take a nap or just like do something else. She was like, this isn't mine. This is hers. And I think she has always given me that respect into my sport and my relationship with my coach, that it was all up to me, even from when I was 13 or 14. It was always my choice. And I mean, I remember the days when I was picking swimming and that was going to be my only sport. And that was like a really, really hard decision for me. And she's like, if you went the other sports, if you went to softball, like I would have done the same thing. And she just kind of let that relationship always myself dictate that with my coach, because I think that is the only reason I'm able to be how I am now, where say like he was like, I want you to swim for this coach. I was like, okay. I just didn't question it because I had that relationship with my coach and I just had to trust full in, because if I'm not trusting my coach to get me where I want to go, then what am I really doing here? And I think that kind of is how that all worked.
Very, very, very interesting. And I like that. That, you know, I really appreciate you being open here. This is different because most people aren't willing to go that deep with it. What about when you get in the car and you hate Randy and he's ridden you and he's driven you to the point where whatever it is, like you're just pissed at that point in time. How does your mom respond at that point?
I think my mom mostly would say, well, did you talk to him? And she's like, if you're really that mad, go have a conversation. And that it was never like, to be honest, she probably was never really on my side. Not in a bad way, but she's just like, if you want something to change and if you're really that mad, like go have a conversation about it and figure it out. Like she's like, you don't have to be there. You don't have to do anything, but you want to swim, you want to be better. And if it doesn't make sense to you and you're so mad, go have that conversation. And I think she made me have those meetings and those talks alone since I was like 14. And I think that was kind of, she just really, she would talk through a lot of things with me. And if I was really mad or upset, and she's like, okay, then don't go to practice. And then I'd be like, well, I'm not going to not go. Like, I have to go. And she's like, okay, well, then you need to figure this out or it's not going to be fun. And so I think like she always knew. I think that was the one thing about swimming is it was always dictated by me whether I kept swimming, because at the end of the day, it is just a sport. And yeah, now it's my job and it's what I do. And I do love it in a lot of ways. And so I think she was probably not on my side now that I think about it.
Well, listen, it's good parenting. The reason why I'm asking this, the reason why I'm digging into this side of it is because people ask about parenting all the time. Like, how do you raise kids? How do you deal with parents in the swim group? You know, what type of parent do you want to be? I mean, these are really interesting topics and questions. And to analyze the way that your mother raised you and to be able to deal with the toughness that you dealt with, and now to be one of the best swimmers in the world and to go through a college program where, you know, so it's very interesting to kind of just hear your perspective on how you were raised, because I think this really goes into, we can learn something here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one thing when I do a lot of talks and a lot of mentorship with Head to Head is a program that actually an old teammate has created. And it's definitely something that I always usually get the question from parents and saying like, what did your mom do? And I'm like, probably nothing. That's the best part.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's the best part. You're right. And listen, I had parents very similar to you. And when it came to not wanting to go to practice, they had a very similar approach of like, okay, miss. And then I'll be like, damn it, you give me that option to miss? Like, I'm not going to miss now, you know? Like,
yeah, it's just like that accountability that you have in yourself is kind of what makes you get to that point. And you don't really realize you're doing it then. I was like, wow, I've really been holding myself accountable since I was like 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking to host your first swim meet or replacing an old timing system? Run a swim meet with ease from your laptop using Superior Swim Timing. You can use Superior Swim Timing with your existing equipment, or they can provide you with a complete timing solution, including deck harnesses, buttons, and starter. SST is fully compatible with High-Tech and Team Unify, as well as Colorado, Daktronics, and Amiga touchpads. Go to superiorswimtiming.com to learn more, and be sure to tell them I sent you. Now, it's interesting, something else you talked about too. Like when I kind of privately messaged you about coming on the podcast, you were like, kind of, why me? And I'm like, you're one of the best swimmers in the world. Are you crazy? Like, of course I'd love to have you on the podcast. And you kind of didn't identify the way I looked at you. You didn't identify that with yourself necessarily. Now, maybe you do, maybe you're just being, nice, but like you still don't really see yourself as one of the best swimmers in the world, do you?
No. Not
Why
at all.
not? Why not?
That's an easy question.
I mean, it's an easy answer because you swam for A&M, one of the best colleges in the country. You swam for Steve Bultman, one of the best, coaches. He's not recruiting you unless you're one of the best swimmers. Then you swam for the London Raw. I mean, one of the best teams in the sector of what do we call it now? Why am I drawing a blank here? Pro swimming. All right. You're on one of the best pro teams in the world. You swim for Canada. You're an Olympic medalist. I mean, come on. Like, what else do you have to do to prove that you're one of the best swimmers in the world?
I don't know. I think there's just so many things that even probably my best swims that I've ever had, I don't know if they've clicked the way that I know they can. And I hope that at one point that does come to play. But
hang on, I just didn't even give you credit for winning a world title. You just literally won a world title. What the hell are you talking about?
So yeah,
did that not click? Did it not click at the world short course for you when you beat everybody else in the world?
No. I mean, yeah, I think that has almost started. I don't even know if it started to click, but I think it's like, okay, like things are happening, and I don't know. I mean, that was a really intense, I think, race, more mentally and emotionally than anything, not really physically, but I don't know. I think there's just so much I think I've left in the sport, and
sure.
I just also think my abilities that I know I can do haven't really been there. And even if they are being some of the best swims in world rankings, I know what I'm capable of in ways. And so I don't know. I think there's so many better swimmers out there than me that have done the times. And I think I have a lot of time still to do.
Interesting. Okay. And that's a fair assessment. I can live with that. In terms of, you said a couple of things there that really interested me. One was you said that it was mentally challenging to win that world title, and more so than physically. Now you weren't ahead the whole race. I mean, you came from behind to win that race. So, but that's kind of a strength of yours. So, what was the mental challenge, particularly? Because I'm interested in the psychology of swimming. So, tell me about the mental challenge.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I finished ISL. The first block of ISL this season was really, really rough for me. I wasn't in a good mental space, and I basically was just trying to enjoy swimming because I hadn't in a while. And then the second block, I was starting to kind of get a grasp on racing again and actually competing, where the first block, I was just trying to get through it. And so yeah, then things started to get a lot better. And then 2 days before the ISL final, I was an idiot. And I'm sure you probably saw, like, ISL showed all these videos of like London Roar, like playing soccer by poolside and just like, just like hopping around, like great time. And of course, Sydney being me, I was like, oh my God, I want to be good at this. Like, I'm not good at it. I shouldn't do land sports 100%. Jumped up for a header, came down on a foam roller pretty hard, and really wrecked my ankle 2 days before. And Tiggy was like, he didn't ask me what happened until as soon as ISL final was over. He goes, so what really happened? I was like, it was playing soccer. So yeah, then I think I was in almost getting a grasp on everything, and then that happened, and it is what it is. I mean, it's just a fluke, and again, it's ISL final, but I was like, I have Abu Dhabi coming up pretty quick, so let's get it under wraps as much as we can. And kind of from that, it almost like I was in such a great mental space, and that just threw me, and it kind of almost put me back in the place that I was before that ISL, and I felt like I had no control again. And it's something that I work a lot with a sports psychologist, and I think just it's such an important part in sport that I think the psychology was so neglected for so long, and now it's so much more in the forefront. And then I kind of I'd stayed overseas and I was in London, and it was like the day before I was supposed to fly out, and I called Ben, and Ben was like, this is a Sydney call. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And so I was like, I can change my flight and I can just go back to Toronto. And I wasn't going to go to Worlds. And I just wasn't in a good mental space. I just was really, really struggling and swimming and just mentally and so many different things. And he was like, well, to be honest, you're our only breaststroker. And he was like, I know you, and I know you don't want to let the girls down, and you don't want us to not be able to do the relays. And I was like, and he was like, but if you need to do what's best for you, do that. But he was like, but I'm just going to play it out blank because I know you, and that's just not who you are. And so he was like, if you get on that plane tomorrow, you get to Abu Dhabi, you don't have to swim, but just get here and we'll talk. And so I kind of it took me a while, and I didn't know what I was going to really do. And then I was like, well, if I get there and don't swim, like, I'll just go home like 2 or 3 days later. I don't know. And so I get there and finally talked to Ben, and he was like, well, if you don't want to do your individuals, like, just do the relays. Like, that's fine. He was like, this is not supposed to be a stressor at the end of the season. This is supposed to be probably the funnest Worlds you could probably have, and just get into the best headspace. He was like, all I want you to do is figure out how to fix your mental space and just enjoy swimming. And so he's like, if that means just doing relays, if that means not swimming, if that means swimming your individuals, whichever. And so I had to make a decision, I think, the day after I had gotten there. And I was like, I don't want to pull out of the 2 IM yet. I'll make that decision come. And then my other events, the 100 IM and 400 IM, it gave other people opportunities to race. And so, yeah, and then I did the relay on the first day, and probably one of my fastest splits because I can't sprint to save my life, but I was swimming 50 breaststroker. So I was like, I'm a sprinter today. And it was an ease into the meet. And then kind of the day before, Ben was like, do you still want to swim the 200 IM? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, if you want to just swim the prelims and then be done, like, you have the 4 medley after, and that'll be that. He's like, you don't have to keep swimming. And so, like, for me, it's hard to get on the blocks. And I think that was something that I was just trying to get comfortable with in ISL. And I had gotten so far and wanted to keep that progression till the end of the season. I didn't want to end the season the way that I did in ISL, being so panicked and not happy. Yeah, and then I swam in the morning and things are okay. Like, I wasn't even looking at times or splits. Like, nothing really made sense at that time with how this season has been. And we were just all kind of hanging on to this awkward, like, only swimming 3 to 4K with ISL and racing, not really having a block to go off of. And then, I mean, it worked out in my favor. And yeah, not that I don't know how it happened, because I know how much more I'm capable of than a 204. I do know that. My coach knows that, and hopefully it'll come into play sometime. But I think that was the first time in a long time that I actually competed and actually raced and enjoyed what I love about swimming. And I mean, it turned out the best possible way that it could have for me. And I don't know what else.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say competed and raced, because when I'm watching the race, there's a point in the race where you clearly make a decision like, I'm fucking winning this race kind of thing. You know, like, I'm not losing this thing. So does that go through your head at some point?
Yeah, I think it was kind of on the second 25 of breaststroke. I was like, or I think actually the back to breaststroke turn, I was like, I'm a better breaststroker than anyone here. And I just told myself that. And then on this last turn for freestyle, it's funny because as much as I love training with Summer, but I know I can beat her on a flip turn because I know her walls aren't as great as mine. Right. So I was like, I'm just literally, this is what I do all the time in practice, just flip as hard as I can and try and hang on to Summer, who's one of the best freestylers in the world. And so, yeah, I think at that point I was like, I'm going to get my hand on the wall first. And yeah, I mean, it's how I normally swim it. That was definitely, it's been my race strategy always. But did I know what time I was going? Did I know if I was 100% going to win? No, but I was like, these people are next to me and I'm going to race them. And that's what I did.
Right. Swim Angelfish. Swim Angelfish is an online certification program that strengthens your teaching curriculum to serve swimmers of all abilities. Swim Angelfish will prepare you and your instructors with the skills to teach swimmers with autism, physical disabilities, anxiety, sensory and motor conditions, and more. Learn to teach skills faster and with more comfort with Swim Angelfish. Apply for an Only Alpha Pool Product Scholarship and receive up to 50% off your certification. Go to swimangelfish.com today to apply. Just going back to something real quick, has it been difficult for you to shut out the personal stuff to the professional stuff? Like when, like from the moment you walk onto the pool deck, is it difficult for you to let go of whatever's going on in your personal life and then become this professional athlete? Is that something you've worked on? It sounds like, right?
Yeah, the thing is, I think sometimes I'm almost too good at it. I think I'm very good at compartmentalizing things, where I can almost shut things out so much that I'm like, you didn't deal with anything. And so when it comes to like on pool deck and on poolside, I can usually just, I mean, you've probably seen me. I never shut the fuck up. Like I'm just chit chatting, like talking to all these coaches, talking to everyone. Yeah. I'm just like going. But like in the back of my mind, like there's probably so many issues like going on. And so I think post Olympics, when Olympic blues and those blues after big meet are so strong, if you don't really deal with them, sometimes they just almost creep up too much. And so I'm usually just so good at shutting things down that sometimes there's so much that I have to eventually work on. So you have to find that time to kind of work through that and have that balance. But yeah, I think I'm really good at compartmentalizing. I think that's why I can shut things off and do well when it comes to training sessions. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. What about your Olympic performance? How did you evaluate it this time? It was your second Olympics, so you'd had some experience. Is there anything you learned from the first time you went round to the second time? Is there anything you did differently, for Tokyo? And did you feel like that worked for you?
I mean, I was 100% very, very disappointed in my Olympics. I mean, I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, it happened, and that's what I had on that day. So I know what I'm capable of, and I know it's better than that.
Like, you're talking individually? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Individually, I think just like it's crazy because when COVID happened, I think some people thrived and some people really struggled. And I 100% really, really struggled because I get a lot of reassurance and confidence from just getting up on the block and racing people, and not having that racing. I didn't really get to practice the mental strategies that I need before racing when it's just like dealing with anxiety or dealing with that stress and that mental performance. And I just thought I was fine because I wasn't actually putting myself in those scenarios to race and put that stress on me. And so going into Olympics, I didn't really know how to handle because I thought I was mentally so strong, but in reality, I never put myself in those high pressure situations. So like, I didn't really feel them. And so then going into the Olympics, everything was so heightened and crazy. And I kind of put that on such a back burner, which is such a shame. And it is what I did. And I know for hopefully the next time of what I can do better. And so like individually, I wasn't super happy with it, but like, I think back to Rio and like, I was a baby back in Rio, like things were so different. And if in Rio you said I was going to be a relay medalist next year, I'd be like, in what relay? Like I don't swim anything that could be on a relay. And then I got to be on 2 in Tokyo. So, which is really cool. And obviously to walk away with a medal, like everyone dreams about winning an Olympic medal. And it was almost like accepting that, where that is a dream of people, like that's what people want. And so I've had to almost shift that mindset that wasn't a disappointment, because initially it is, but obviously I'm super grateful, and it was cool to do it with 3 people that I train with every day, which when you're coming to international level, that's not always the case. yeah, I think from Rio to Tokyo is so different, but I think there's a lot to learn in this cycle, even if it's a shorter one too.
Is there a woman that you compete against that has been difficult for you to overcome, like to beat? I mean, is there someone that has been tough for you?
Obviously, I mean, Katinka's a legend, and I think it's
Mm,
an honor to be able to race with someone who, I mean, that world record hasn't, no one's really close to it in a really
right.
long time at
Mm,
206. Like, no one's, I mean, obviously, I wasn't able to go to the time at the Olympics, but I don't think it was a super fast time. And I
yeah.
think that being able to race with her as long as I have, I feel very, very fortunate. And at the same time, I will never forget the first time that I actually beat her. And more just not even like the time wasn't great. It was at some meet in China, actually like a week before COVID began, which like
Mm.
a week later we would have been stuck in China, but that's a whole nother story. Um, but I think that race wasn't incredible, but it was almost just saying like, I can beat her. And whether I will from here on out, I don't know. And whether I will every time or she will, like, it doesn't matter. But it was almost just like putting it into reality. That was a huge, I think, turning point, was just knowing what I can do and not limiting myself. Where my best time that I've swam was against her and getting second. And I think I'm always so grateful because she's pushed me to be the best times that I can be, because one, we swim very differently, but also just she's a legend. But definitely, I mean, I won't forget the time that I did and how much that helped me get a little bit mentally stronger. But I mean, IM's changing. I mean, I don't even know the whole ready room anymore. I'm like, I don't even know anyone anymore.
I just drew this graph as you were talking, and I don't know if it's going to make any sense. I'm not an artist, by the way, and that's your name up top. That's all the notes I took for you, by the way.
I'm super complicated.
Yes, but look at this graph, right? So this is under here. This is everybody in the whole world that you've beaten. I mean, you've conquered everybody. Now, right here is this little part right here where you finished fourth, I guess, or what is it, fourth at the World Championships. You got 3 bronzes at Worlds. So, like, okay, what I'm trying to say to you is, like, listen, you are clearly one of the best swimmers in the world. Now, how do we just take that next, like, just trip and fall into the gold medal? Like, what's the next level? Like, it's just like this one little level, like, you're missing. And I maybe it's just a belief in you. Like, I don't know. Like, it just seems like you don't truly believe you're the best. And maybe you do, but, like, how do we get there is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, physically,
You don't lack anything, right? You don't lack anything physically.
I mean, my flies, man.
I mean,
It's changed a lot, though, to be fair. I swear, I know this research is probably way far back, but please watch. I used to swim so slow. Even I think like 2017, I think like my 4 a.m., I think it was dead last and
so
then
what'd you
was
do to fix
third.
that then? I mean, you made some changes, right?
Yeah, I mean, power has been a huge change. I mean,
Okay.
Ben is like such a crazy, like, spikes in practice were like always fun when I was
Right.
with like Steve or Randy, where now it's like you have to be so powerful and
Mm,
understanding that like connection from weights to swimming. And Ben is amazing at that. So
yeah.
that's been huge
Yeah.
for my fly, especially. But I think for me, it's definitely the mental side is a biggest part. And I think I know how to get there. And unfortunately, before Olympics and with COVID, I definitely didn't think of it as primary as I needed to. And now it's just such a forefront. I mean, I'm in therapy every single week with a sports psych, just like, what are my skills? Like, and just almost making it so realistic where if you tell me what you want me to work on for a stroke and doing 1050s tech, tell me where you want my hands and elbows. And that is like my jam. I love
Mm,
that. And
mm.
so almost working with a sports psych and be like, here are your skills, use this here and here and here. And I'm like, this is my jam. And so almost that's been the name of the game for me since after Olympics, and things have been pretty good. I mean, ISL was better the second time around. Worlds, I won my first world title. And so now just keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly feels like it's all lining up for Paris, and I'm not putting pressure on you here, but I'm like, in terms of your experience and your knowledge of yourself and your belief in yourself, it does feel like it's coming to a point where this could honestly be your best Olympics a couple of years from now, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think I wouldn't continue in the sport without having that mindset for sure. And I think I've learned a lot. And when you say like experience, like I'm not old, but like
No.
my group makes me feel old sometimes. And yeah, I mean, people are like, this is your 10th year on the team. I'm like, okay, hold on. Like that, but I think it's definitely, I still have a lot left.
Yeah, plenty.
And so yeah, I think things are hopefully lining up. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like from now until Paris, but I'm just happy that I have so many options of things that I can do, and just I think I'll know when it's perfect for me of what exactly I need, and yeah.
So right now you said training's ramping up. You're training with Ben and the group there. You're happy with the group and everything's kind of, what are you working towards now?
Yeah, so I'm in Toronto. I actually had COVID after Christmas, unfortunately. But it's been good the past couple weeks. Honestly, it was like I swam for a week, then had COVID, and then been like ramped up ever since, which it's kind of weird because like that first week you are like destroyed, and then almost it sometimes can carry over, where like I think it almost was like a good balance for me getting COVID and having that little break, because past couple weeks have been great. I'm actually heading over to the UK this weekend. And so I'm going to go over and train with Steve Tiggs for a little bit. And
Cool.
yeah, I think normally we would have had a Florida camp, but because of that, because of COVID, we couldn't have that early Jan. So it'll be nice to have a little bit of a change of scenery. And I really love working with Steve. And so do that for a little bit, and then a meet in Mexico, and then I will be back in Toronto, and then trials is coming up way quicker than it feels.
That's right. Yeah, it's like 10 weeks from now, isn't it? Not too far.
It's crazy. Like even just looking at my planner, mostly because I have to figure out my dog sitting schedule. I'm like looking, and I'm like, I get back. It's like we're supposed to go to Florida like a week after. Then it's like a week back here. Then like trials. I'm like, how the heck is it already trials?
Yeah, very quick. Well, hopefully it all goes to plan. I mean, there's still some restrictions in Canada, or parts of Canada. They've closed some parts down, right?
Yeah, today or yesterday was the first time indoor dining is now open, which is kind of crazy for people in the US. They're like, you can finally eat at a restaurant? I'm confused. And I was like, yes, we have not been able to eat at a restaurant. Like we can't.
Madness. How do you survive? I mean, imagine owning a restaurant. How bad is that for them?
Oh, it is like some of the local places here. Like when I get takeout, I was like, I'm going to sit and talk to you guys for a half hour just because they're like the best. But yeah, me and Kylie definitely do a lot of takeout and eat on a park bench in like the -20. And we're like, we're enjoying this life, I swear.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you opening up. I appreciate the conversation. I didn't know you, so this is nice to get to know you a little bit. I pulled you onto an app. Any questions? So, feel free to kind of reach out and ask you some questions. One other thing I want to plug here is just this T-shirt I'm wearing. It's my buddy Mike Lewis. Mike Lewis is one of the best sports photographers in the world. Mike is an incredible swimming photographer, and I'm a supporter of good people, and Mike's a good person. So if you guys want this shirt, there you go. I'm not the best model, but that's it. So anyway, it's didyouSwimToday.com. This is Mike Lewis's shirt. Go and buy one of these shirts. Support Mike. He's, like I said, one of the best sports photographers in the world. Probably he was over at the ISL, so probably took some pics of you. Good man. But anyway, listen, Sydney, I really appreciate this. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, good luck with everything. And we'll I don't know when this will come out, but it'll be out soon. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye. Event, heat, lane, name of swimmer, times and places. It's called Swimnerd Live, and it allows the data and times from your actual scoreboard to be broadcast and viewed in real time on any smart TV, phone, or other device. There are so many things you can do with this software. A very simple and easy to use necessity for any team or facility that is live streaming their meets results. One click on any device and they're watching your swim meet live in real time. Go to swimpractice.com to learn more.